My brothers and my sisters, listen to me carefully. Some tests do not end with applause. Some hardships do not leave with an announcement. There is no voice from the sky that says it is finished. The test simply releases you. One day you wake up and the weight is lighter. The fear no longer controls your thoughts. The pain no longer defines your identity. And you wonder, when did this change happen? It changed the moment Allah knew your heart was ready. Because Allah does not end a test when life becomes easy. He ends it when you become strong enough to carry whatever comes next. You thought the struggle was meant to break you, but it was shaping you. You thought the delay was punishment, but it was preparation. If you are still praying after the pain, still trusting after the disappointment, still standing after what should have destroyed you, then understand this clearly. You did not fail this test. You passed it. And today, I want to remind you how Allah knows when the final test is truly over. One, the test ends when your heart stops arguing with Allah. At the beginning of every test, the heart reacts before the soul understands. The mind searches for logic, and the tongue forms questions that come from pain, not disbelief. A person looks at their life and says, why me, Ya Allah? Why now, when I was finally stable? Why this pain, when I was trying to do better? Why did you allow this when you know my limits? These questions do not make someone weak in faith. They make them human. Allah created the heart and He knows how it trembles under pressure. He knows the tears before they fall, the sighs before they escape, and the thoughts we never dare to speak out loud. In the early stages of a test, the heart resists. It pushes back against reality. It tries to make sense of something that hurts too much to understand. This resistance often shows itself as constant inner arguments. A person keeps replaying events in their mind, searching for a different outcome, a different decision, a different path that could have avoided the pain. The heart keeps asking for explanations, as if clarity alone will remove the suffering. But clarity does not always heal. Sometimes it only deepens the wound. Then slowly something begins to change. Not suddenly, not dramatically, and not because life has improved. It changes quietly. The heart grows tired of fighting what it cannot control. The constant questioning begins to exhaust the soul. And in that exhaustion, a realization forms. Arguing with Allah does not bring peace. At that moment, the heart does not become passive and it does not give up. It lets go. There is a difference. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop trying to overpower the wisdom of the one who sees what you cannot see. This is the moment when the heart stops demanding explanations. A person no longer says, Ya Allah, if you fix this, then I will be patient. They no longer bargain with obedience or worship. They no longer attach their trust to conditions. Instead, a quieter dua replaces the noise. It is not dramatic, it is not long, it is simply sincere. Ya Allah, I trust you even if I do not understand what you are doing with my life. That sentence carries more strength than 1,000 questions. It is not surrender to defeat, it is surrender to wisdom. This is why that moment is not loss, it is victory. Victory over the ego that wants control. Victory over the illusion that we must understand everything in order to accept it. Victory over the belief that peace only comes when pain ends. True tawakkul does not wait for circumstances to improve. It appears while the storm is still active. Allah tells us in the Quran that whoever places their reliance upon Him, Allah is sufficient for them. He does not say Allah becomes sufficient after the problem disappears. He says Allah is sufficient while the problem exists. That means reliance itself is a form of protection. Many people misunderstand tawakkul. They think it means pretending that pain does not hurt or acting strong when the heart is breaking. That is not tawakkul. Tawakkul is honesty with Allah. It is admitting weakness while trusting strength. It is acknowledging fear while placing faith above it. When a person reaches that state, the test begins to lose its grip on them. The situation may still be difficult, but it no longer controls their inner world. And when the test no longer controls the heart, it has already served its purpose. Understand this clearly. Allah does not measure tests by how painful they are. He measures them by what they produce in the heart. If hardship produces humility, patience, sincerity, and closeness to Allah, then the test has succeeded. And once it succeeds, it does not need to remain in the same form. Sometimes Allah removes it, sometimes He softens it, sometimes He replaces it with something else, but the turning point always begins inside the heart, not outside, in circumstances. This is why two people can face the same hardship and one is destroyed while the other is elevated. The difference is not strength, intelligence, or luck. The difference is where the heart stands with Allah. When the heart stops arguing, it opens itself to acceptance. Acceptance does not mean approval of pain. It means trusting the wisdom behind it. A heart that accepts Allah's decree without conditions becomes lighter, even if the burden remains. There is also a subtle sign that this shift has happened. You stop asking, when will this end? And start asking, what does Allah want to teach me through this? That question changes everything. It turns suffering into meaning. It turns waiting into growth. And it turns pain into purification. When the heart reaches this stage, impatience begins to fade, anger softens, resentment loses its edge. The person may still feel sadness, but it no longer feels rebellious. It feels reflective. The test does not end when the pain disappears. This is where many people get confused. They think passing a test means immediate relief, but often relief comes later. First comes alignment. First comes acceptance. First comes peace in the heart. When the heart aligns with Allah's wisdom, the test has already ended in the sight of Allah, even if traces of it remain in life. So if you find that you are no longer fighting Allah in your heart, no longer questioning His intentions, no longer attaching your faith to outcomes, then understand what that means. It means Allah has carried you to the other side of the test internally. What remains externally is only a process. The real battle was always inside you. And the moment your heart accepted Allah's wisdom without conditions, you won. That is when the test truly ends. 2. Allah does not test what He has abandoned. One of the most dangerous thoughts that enters the heart during hardship is the belief that Allah has turned away from you. When pain lasts longer than expected, when dua seems unanswered, and when relief does not come quickly, the heart whispers, maybe Allah is displeased with me. Maybe I am being punished. Maybe I am forgotten. This thought does not come from strength. It comes from exhaustion. And if it is not corrected, it can slowly poison faith. So let us be very clear about something fundamental. Allah does not test what He has abandoned. Allah tests what He is refining. He tests what He cares about. He tests what He intends to raise. If Allah wanted to ignore you, He would leave you comfortable but distant. He would allow you to drift without guilt. He would let you sin without remorse and sleep without prayer. That is abandonment. Ease without guidance is far more dangerous than hardship with Allah's attention. A heart that feels pain but still turns to Allah is not rejected. It is chosen. Look at the lives of the prophets, and this confusion disappears. The most beloved people to Allah were tested the most severely. Nuh was mocked for centuries. Ibrahim was thrown into fire. Yusuf was betrayed, imprisoned, and forgotten. Musa was chased, rejected, and burdened with a nation that constantly disobeyed. And our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam faced loss, hunger, exile, and grief that would break most hearts. None of this was because Allah disliked them. It was because Allah was preparing them. Testing is not a sign of distance. Testing is a sign of attention. It is Allah shaping the heart, stripping it of reliance on people, on plans, on control, and redirecting it back to Him. A heart that is never tested often becomes attached to the world. A heart that is tested learns where true safety lies. This is why hardship often awakens the soul. People who never prayed begin to pray. People who were distracted begin to reflect. People who trusted everything else begin to trust Allah. This does not happen because hardship is good in itself. It happens because Allah uses hardship as a tool of mercy. The pain pushes the heart toward what truly matters. Many people ask, if Allah loves me, why did He allow this? The better question is, if Allah allowed this, what kind of love is He building in me? Love that has never been tested is fragile. Faith that has never been shaken is shallow. Allah strengthens faith by placing it under pressure, just as muscles grow by resistance. Without pressure, there is no growth. Another truth we must understand is that tests are not always punishment for sins. Sometimes they are purification, sometimes they are elevation, sometimes they are protection from something worse that you cannot see. Allah's knowledge is not limited to the present moment. He sees outcomes you will never know. He blocks certain paths not to deprive you, but to save you. When Allah tests you, He is not asking whether you will survive. He already knows the outcome. The test is not for Allah, it is for you. It reveals what is inside your heart. It exposes attachments you did not realize you had. It uncovers weaknesses so they can be healed. And it brings sincerity to the surface. This is why a believer should never interpret hardship as proof of worthlessness. If anything, hardship is often a sign that Allah sees potential. He does not polish stones that will never shine. He does not refine hearts that are meant to remain empty. When Allah invests effort in shaping you, it is because He intends to use you for something greater than your comfort. There is also mercy hidden in the fact that tests have limits. Allah says that He does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear. This does not mean the test will feel easy. It means it is measured. Even when you feel overwhelmed, Allah knows exactly how much pressure your heart can take before it breaks. And He never crosses that line. If you are still breathing, still believing, still standing, then the test has not exceeded your capacity. That itself is evidence of Allah's care. Many people survive hardship and later realize that it saved them from arrogance. It humbled them. It made them compassionate. It made them patient. Without the test, they might have been successful but spiritually empty. With the test, they became grounded, aware, and connected to Allah. This is not something you appreciate while it is happening. It becomes clear only in hindsight. So when you look at your pain, do not rush to label it as abandonment. Look deeper. Ask yourself what it has taught you. Ask yourself how it has changed your relationship with Allah. Ask yourself whether it has softened your heart or hardened it. If it brought you closer to Allah, then it was not rejection, it was guidance in a difficult form. Remember this as well. Allah tests believers in different ways. Some are tested with loss, some with waiting, some with loneliness, some with responsibility, and some with blessings that threaten to distract them. Every test is tailored. Allah does not randomly distribute pain. He gives each soul what it needs for its journey. When the test begins to ease, or when your heart begins to feel stronger within it, do not assume Allah finally noticed you. He was always watching. The test ends not because Allah became merciful, but because mercy was the reason for the test in the first place. So hold on to this truth firmly. If Allah is testing you, He has not left you. He is working on you. He is protecting you from something unseen. He is preparing you for something ahead. And when the lesson is learned, the test will either end or transform, because Allah does not keep pain without purpose. Allah never abandons what He is shaping. 3. The final test leaves you humble, not arrogant. One of the clearest signs that a test has truly ended is not found in your circumstances, but in your character. When a test finishes its work, it does not inflate the ego, it softens the heart. It does not make a person loud about their strength. It makes them quiet about their dependence on Allah. If hardship made you arrogant, then it did not finish shaping you. But if it humbled you, then understand that the test reached its purpose. At the beginning of pain, people often imagine that surviving difficulty will make them feel powerful. They think that once the struggle is over, they will stand taller than others and feel superior for enduring what others could not. But Allah does not raise people by feeding their ego. He raises them by breaking it gently, then rebuilding it correctly. Real strength in Islam is never arrogance. It is humility anchored in awareness of Allah. When a person comes out of a severe test, they stop assuming things about others. Before pain, it is easy to judge. Easy to say, why are they weak? Easy to think, if that were me, I would handle it better. But after pain, that language disappears. You realize how fragile people truly are. You understand that everyone is carrying something unseen. You stop measuring others by what you can see, because your own deepest battles were invisible to most people. This humility is not insecurity, it is clarity. You no longer see yourself as self-made. You no longer attribute survival to intelligence, planning, or personal strength. You know the truth. You were carried. There were moments you should have broken, but you did not. There were nights you had no strength left, yet you woke up the next day. There were times when your heart was empty, but somehow you kept going. And you know with certainty that this did not come from you. That awareness changes how you speak, how you listen, and how you treat people. You become slower to criticize and quicker to excuse. You stop demanding perfection from others because you know how messy growth can be. Hardship removes the illusion that people are simple. It teaches you that every smile may hide a struggle and every silence may be heavy with pain. Allah loves humility because it keeps the heart open. An arrogant heart cannot receive guidance. It thinks it already knows. But a humble heart remains teachable. It listens, it reflects. It stays aware of its dependence on Allah. This is why Allah often breaks arrogance through hardship, not to humiliate, but to save a person from spiritual destruction. Pride distances a person from Allah far more than weakness ever could. After a test, a humble person does not boast about how patient they were. They remember how close they came to despair. They remember moments of weakness, doubt, and fear. And instead of being ashamed of those moments, they become grateful that Allah did not abandon them during them. This gratitude replaces pride. A person begins to say in their heart, Ya Allah, if you left me to myself for even a moment, I would have been lost. This humility also shows itself in worship. Before the test, worship may have been routine. After the test, worship becomes sincere, not louder, not longer for display, but deeper. Dua becomes honest, stripped of formality. Salah becomes refuge, not obligation alone. The heart no longer stands before Allah with entitlement. It stands with need. And Allah loves a servant who knows they need Him. Another sign of humility after hardship is the loss of bitterness. A person who has truly passed a test does not come out angry at the world. They do not carry resentment toward Allah or people. They may still remember the pain, but it does not define them. Instead of bitterness, they carry understanding. They realize that pain was not personal, it was purposeful. And once you understand that, resentment has no place to grow. Humility also changes how a person views success after hardship. When Allah opens doors after difficulty, a humble person does not rush to claim credit. They do not forget where they came from. They do not look down on those still struggling. They remember the days when they were the one asking Allah for relief. And that memory keeps their heart grounded even when their situation improves. This is why humility is one of the greatest gifts a test can leave behind. Without it, success becomes dangerous. Comfort becomes corrupting. But with humility, blessings become safe. A humble heart can carry ease without becoming ungrateful. It can handle praise without becoming arrogant. It can receive blessings without forgetting Allah. Understand this clearly. A test that ends with arrogance was not completed properly. It may have paused, but its lesson remains unfinished. Allah does not remove hardship to create pride. He removes hardship once humility has settled in the heart. Because humility protects faith long after pain has passed. So if you notice that you are gentler than before, more patient with people, more aware of Allah, less judgmental, and less impressed with yourself, then recognize what that means. The test did not break you. It shaped you. It removed something dangerous from your heart and replaced it with something beautiful. And that is how you know the final test truly left its mark. 4. When the test ends, the heart finds peace before life improves. One of the biggest misconceptions people carry is that the end of a test must look dramatic. They expect a sudden change in circumstances, a clear victory, or an obvious reward. They believe that when Allah ends a test, life must immediately become easier. But this is not how Allah works with the heart. Very often, the test ends internally long before anything changes externally. The first sign is not relief in life. The first sign is peace in the heart. A person may still be facing the same challenges. The situation may look exactly the same to everyone else. The problems may not have disappeared, but inside, something has shifted. The heart is no longer restless. The mind no longer races endlessly. The weight that once sat on the chest begins to lift. not completely, but enough for the soul to breathe again. That peace does not come from solutions, it comes from Allah. This is why Allah places great importance on sakina. Sakina is not happiness, it is not excitement, it is not the absence of pain. It is a calm that settles into the heart despite uncertainty. It is the ability to sit with difficulty without being consumed by it. When Allah places sakina in the heart, it changes how a person experiences hardship. The storm may still exist, but it no longer lives inside you. Before the test ends, the heart is constantly agitated. Every small issue feels overwhelming. Every delay feels unbearable. Every silence feels heavy. The mind keeps replaying worst case scenarios. Sleep becomes difficult. Peace feels impossible. But when the test has served its purpose, Allah eases the heart even if He does not immediately change the situation. A person begins to accept what they cannot control. They stop fighting reality. And that acceptance brings relief that no external solution could provide. This is a mercy from Allah. Because if peace depended on circumstances, most people would never experience it. Life is unpredictable. Problems come and go. But Allah teaches the believer that peace comes from trust, not control. When the heart finally understands this, it stops exhausting itself trying to manage what belongs to Allah alone. There is another subtle change that happens at this stage. The fear that once dominated the heart loses its power. It does not disappear entirely, but it no longer paralyzes. A person still feels concern, but not panic. They still care, but they no longer obsess. They begin to say, whatever happens, Allah is with me. That sentence alone can quiet a storm inside the soul. This peace does not mean the person has stopped making dua. It means the dua has changed in tone. It is no longer desperate. It is no longer rushed. It becomes calm, steady and trusting. A person asks Allah for goodness while accepting that Allah's timing is better than their urgency. That level of trust only comes after a heart has been shaped by difficulty. Many people miss this sign because they are too focused on what has not changed. They keep waiting for visible proof that the test is over. But Allah often gives internal relief before external relief. This is because external change without internal readiness can be harmful. If Allah gave ease to a heart that was still restless, ungrateful or fearful, that ease would be wasted. So Allah prepares the heart first. He makes it strong enough to carry blessings without losing Him. Another sign that the heart has found peace is that you stop replaying the past obsessively. The pain may still be remembered, but it no longer controls your present. You no longer define yourself by what happened to you. You no longer live inside old wounds. The heart begins to focus forward instead of constantly looking back. That is healing, and healing is a sign that the test is ending. This peace also shows itself in how a person handles delays. Before, waiting felt unbearable. Every delay felt like rejection. But now, waiting becomes easier. Not because the desire is gone, but because trust has grown. A person understands that what is meant for them will not miss them, and what misses them was never meant to stay. This understanding removes anxiety from the heart. It is important to understand that peace does not mean the absence of sadness. A person can still feel sadness and be at peace. They can still grieve and be content with Allah's decree. Islam does not demand emotional numbness. It teaches emotional balance. The Prophet ﷺ felt sadness, but his heart remained firm in trust. That is the model. When the test ends internally, a person becomes emotionally stable. Even if life is unstable, they no longer rise and fall with every change. Their faith anchors them. They learn to say, Alhamdulillah, in every state, not because everything is good, but because Allah is always good. This stage is dangerous if misunderstood. Some people think peace means the test is completely over and become careless. But peace is not permission to become lazy or disconnected. It is preparation. Allah gives peace so that the believer can move forward with clarity, patience, and wisdom. It is a sign that the heart is now aligned with Allah's plan. So if you find that your heart is calmer than before, that you are no longer drowning in anxiety, that you can think clearly even while facing difficulty, then recognize this blessing. Do not dismiss it. Do not overlook it. This is Allah telling you that the hardest part has passed. The internal battle is over. Life will still test you in different ways. but this particular test has completed its work. Allah has strengthened your heart, steadied your soul, and given you peace before giving you answers. And that peace is often the clearest sign that the test is ending, even if the world has not caught up yet. When Allah gives peace, no situation can take it away. 5. The test ends when you stop begging for escape and start asking for guidance. At the beginning of hardship, almost every dua sounds the same. It comes from pain, fear, and exhaustion. A person raises their hands and says, Ya Allah, take this away. Ya Allah, end this now. Ya Allah, I cannot handle this anymore. And there is nothing wrong with this. Allah is Al-Latif. He is gentle with His servants. He knows that when pain first strikes, the heart is overwhelmed. It does not think clearly. It only wants relief. But as time passes, something important begins to happen inside the believer. The heart slowly realizes that the test is not leaving immediately. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months. And the believer begins to understand that this hardship is not accidental. It has a purpose. It is staying longer than expected because it is working on something deeper than circumstances. This is when the dua starts to change. The believer no longer only asks Allah to remove the pain. They begin to ask Allah to show them how to walk through it correctly. The dua shifts from Ya Allah, end this, to Ya Allah, guide me through this. And that shift is not small. It is a sign of maturity in faith. It means the heart has stopped running away from the test and has started learning from it. Begging for escape focuses on comfort. Asking for guidance focuses on growth. And Allah loves growth that leads to closeness. When a believer reaches this stage, they stop asking questions like, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what does Allah want from me in this situation? That question alone transforms suffering into purpose. It turns hardship into a classroom rather than a prison. The believer no longer feels trapped. They feel guided even while struggling. This does not mean the pain suddenly becomes easy. It means the pain becomes meaningful. And meaning changes how the heart carries weight. A person can carry heavy things when they understand why they are carrying them. But carrying pain without meaning crushes the soul. Allah does not want His servants crushed. He wants them refined. At this stage, the believer begins to reflect deeply. They examine their intentions. They look at their relationship with Allah. They notice habits that distance them from Him and habits that bring them closer. Hardship becomes a mirror. It shows the believer where they were relying on the world too much, where they were neglecting their soul, and where their faith was fragile. This self-awareness is painful, but it is also a mercy. When guidance becomes the focus of dua, the believer becomes less desperate and more grounded. They still ask for relief, but they trust Allah's timing. They stop setting conditions on their faith. They no longer say, if Allah fixes this, then I will obey Him. Instead, they say, Ya Allah, help me obey You even while this remains. That is sincerity. And sincerity changes everything. Allah responds differently to this kind of dua. When a servant asks for guidance, Allah strengthens their heart. He gives clarity where there was confusion. He gives patience where there was panic. He gives stability where there was chaos. The believer may not notice it immediately, but over time they realize they are handling things better. They are reacting with more wisdom and less emotion. That is Allah answering the dua. There is also a powerful sign that appears at this stage. The believer stops comparing their test to others. Before, they might have said, why is my life harder than theirs? But now, that comparison fades. They understand that Allah gives every soul a different path. They stop measuring fairness by ease. They start measuring success by closeness to Allah. This is when the test begins to loosen its grip. Not because the problem is gone, but because the believer has learned how to carry it correctly. Allah does not need to keep applying pressure once the lesson is understood. Just as a teacher does not repeat a lesson once the student has learnt it, Allah does not prolong pain without purpose. Asking for guidance also changes how a believer views outcomes. They stop seeing only one acceptable result. They trust that whatever Allah chooses will be better for their faith, even if it is not what they originally wanted. This level of trust is not blind. It is built through experience. The believer has seen how Allah protected them in the past, even when they did not understand it at the time. At this stage, the believer also becomes more careful with their tongue. They stop complaining excessively. They stop spreading negativity. They become mindful of how words shape the heart. Complaining feeds helplessness. Gratitude feeds strength. And guidance teaches balance. The believer learns to express pain without rebellion and hope without entitlement. Another important change happens here. The believer stops chasing signs and starts strengthening principles. They no longer look for constant reassurance that things will work out exactly as they want. They focus on doing what is right, being patient, praying consistently, and trusting Allah's wisdom. This stability is powerful. It shows Allah that the servant is no longer driven by fear, but by faith. When a believer reaches this level, the test has already begun to end, even if it still exists on the surface. Allah does not rush outcomes, but He responds quickly to sincere hearts. The moment guidance becomes the priority, Allah begins to redirect the path. Sometimes the hardship eases. Sometimes it transforms into something manageable. Sometimes Allah replaces it entirely, but the internal work is done. This is why many people look back on their hardest tests and say, that pain changed me, not because it destroyed them, but because it aligned them with Allah. They emerged more aware, more sincere, and more focused on the hereafter than before. That is not failure, that is success. So if you find that your dua has changed, that your heart is more concerned with pleasing Allah than escaping discomfort, then understand what that means. The test has taught you what it was meant to teach. You are no longer running from it. You are walking through it with guidance. And when a servant reaches that stage, Allah does not keep them trapped. He opens a door because the lesson has already settled in the heart. That is when the test truly begins to end. 6. What broke you was never meant to stay with you. One of the hardest truths to accept during a test is that not everything you lose is a loss. When something breaks your heart, the first reaction is to hold on tighter. You try to fix it, save it, revive it, or return to how things were before. The pain convinces you that what left was essential to your happiness. But Allah, in His wisdom, sometimes removes things precisely because they were never meant to stay with you. Many tests come through separation, the loss of a person, a dream, a version of life you planned, or an expectation you built your heart around. And the pain of that separation can feel unbearable because the heart becomes attached before it becomes aware. Attachment makes us believe that our survival depends on what we are holding on to. But Allah knows what the heart cannot see clearly in pain. He knows when an attachment has become a distraction, a burden, or a barrier between the servant and Him. Not everything that feels good is good for you, and not everything that hurts is harmful in the long term. Sometimes Allah removes something not to punish you, but to protect you from what it would eventually cost you. He sees outcomes you will never witness. He knows where certain paths would have led. He knows how certain relationship would have drained your faith, how certain ambitions would have hardened your heart, and how certain comforts would have made you forget Him. So He intervenes, and His intervention often feels like breaking. This is why some tests feel so personal. You say, Ya Allah, why this? Why did you take this from me when I needed it so badly? But what you needed emotionally and what you needed spiritually were not the same. Allah prioritizes the soul over comfort, always. And the soul sometimes needs separation in order to heal. What breaks you initially is not the loss itself. It is the belief that you cannot live without what you lost. Over time, Allah gently shows you that you can breathe again, that you can function, that you can smile, that you can pray, that you can grow. And that realization is not meant to shame you, it is meant to free you. It teaches you that your strength was never dependent on that person, that thing, or that situation. Your strength came from Allah all along. When something leaves your life after causing deep pain, it often leaves behind clarity. You begin to see things you ignored before, red flags you explained away, signs you dismissed, warnings you overlooked because attachment made you blind. Allah removes the veil slowly, not to hurt you, but to help you understand. And understanding brings closure that emotion alone never could. This is also why Allah does not always allow things to return once they are removed. Not because He is cruel, but because returning to what broke broke you would undo the healing. Some doors are closed permanently because reopening them would reopen wounds that Allah worked hard to heal. A believer who understands this stops chasing what Allah has taken away. They stop begging for what was never meant to stay. There is also wisdom in the timing of separation. Allah often removes things at the moment they would have caused the most damage later. You may not see it now. You may only feel loss. But years later, you will look back and realize that what you wanted so badly would have destroyed something far more valuable in you. That realization brings gratitude that only comes with maturity and hindsight. Another important truth is this: Allah does not empty your hands without planning to fill them with something better. But better does not always mean similar. It means healthier, stronger, more aligned with your faith, more sustainable for your soul. When a believer insists on replacing loss with something identical, they delay healing. When they trust Allah to choose better, they open themselves to growth. This lesson also teaches detachment, not detachment from people, but detachment from dependence. The believer learns to love without making idols, to care without losing themselves, to appreciate without clinging. This balance is essential for spiritual health. Anything that threatens your relationship with Allah cannot be allowed to own your heart completely. What broke you also taught you limits. It showed you what you can and cannot carry. It revealed where you gave too much, trusted too easily, or ignored your own spiritual needs. Those lessons are painful, but they are protective. A believer who learns from them does not repeat the same mistakes. They love with wisdom, they trust with boundaries, they move forward with awareness. This is why the end of this kind of test often comes with acceptance rather than regret. You stop wishing things had stayed the same. You stop replaying alternate versions of life. You accept that what happened was part of your journey, not a detour from it. Acceptance does not erase pain, but it releases the grip pain has on your future. So if something left your life and broke your heart, do not rush to conclude that it ruined you. Ask yourself what it removed from you that needed to go. Ask yourself what it taught you about reliance, attachment, and trust. Ask yourself whether holding on would have cost you your peace, your faith, or your self-respect. What Allah removes after breaking you was never meant to define you. It was meant to refine you. And when you finally let go, not because it stopped hurting, but because you trusted Allah's wisdom, you will realize something powerful. You did not lose what you needed. You were freed from what was holding you back. That is when this test truly reaches its end. 7. After the final test, responsibility increases. Many people think that passing a test means rest. They imagine that once Allah lifts a hardship, life should finally become easy and light. But in reality, when Allah ends a major test, He does not reduce responsibility, He increases it. Not as a burden, but as an honor. Because growth always comes with accountability. When Allah allows you to go through something that reshapes your heart, He does not do it just for you. He does it so that what you learned can be carried forward into how you live, how you treat people, and how you represent faith. Surviving a test is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new role. After hardship, you see the world differently. You understand pain in a way you did not before. You recognize fear in others because you have lived it. You notice silence because you once carried it. That awareness is not accidental. Allah gave it to you so that you would be gentler with people, not harsher, more patient, not more demanding, more understanding, not more judgmental. With awareness comes responsibility. Once Allah teaches you something, you are expected to act on it. If hardship taught you patience, then you are now responsible for practicing patience even when life improves. If pain taught you humility, then you are responsible for staying humble when success comes. If loneliness taught you empathy, then you are responsible for showing up for others who feel alone. This is why the believer cannot return to who they were before the test. That version of you does not exist anymore. Allah has reshaped your heart, and with that reshaping comes a higher standard. You are no longer allowed the same excuses. You are no longer allowed the same ignorance. You know better now. And knowing better means doing better. Responsibility also shows itself in how you speak. A person who has passed a major test becomes careful with words. They know how deeply words can wound or heal. They know that careless speech can reopen scars in others. So they choose kindness over sharpness. They choose honesty without cruelty. This restraint is not weakness. It is maturity born from pain. Another responsibility is gratitude. Not shallow gratitude that appears only in comfort, but deep gratitude that remains even in difficulty. Allah expects a believer who has tasted hardship to recognize blessings quickly. Small things no longer feel small. Peace, stability, health, and faith are appreciated in ways they never were before. Ingratitude after hardship is dangerous because it wastes the lesson Allah worked to teach. After the final test, Allah also expects consistency. Many people turn to Allah intensely during pain and then drift away when relief comes. This is one of the greatest failures after success. If Allah carried you through darkness, then walking away from Him in light is ingratitude of the highest level. The believer who passes a test understands that closeness to Allah was not a temporary survival tool. It was the point all along. Responsibility also increases in how you handle future tests. Passing one major test does not mean life will never test you again. It means you are now expected to respond better next time, with more trust, with less panic, with quicker return to Allah. You have experience now. And experience is a trust. Allah does not test you the same way twice. Each test builds on the previous one. And if you learned the lesson, the next test will not crush you. But if you ignored the lesson, the test may repeat itself in a different form. Responsibility is what prevents repetition. Another heavy responsibility after hardship is not allowing pain to become an excuse for harming others. Some people survive suffering and then use it to justify cruelty, distance, or emotional coldness. That is failure, not strength. Pain is meant to produce compassion, not bitterness. Allah will question how you treated others after teaching you what pain feels like. There is also responsibility toward your relationship with Allah. After a test, dua should not become lazy. Salah should not become rushed. Remembrance should not disappear. If Allah gave you strength when you were weak, then remembering Him when you are strong is the least you can do. Strength without remembrance leads to arrogance. Remembrance keeps strength clean. Passing a test also means becoming an example, even if quietly. Not everyone is meant to speak publicly or teach formally, but everyone teaches through behavior. People notice how you handle stress, how you treat others, how you react when things do not go your way. Your conduct becomes a silent message about trust in Allah. Allah does not elevate people for decoration. He elevates them for purpose. And purpose requires responsibility. So if Allah ended a test in your life, do not ask only for ease. Ask for istiqamah. Ask for steadiness. Ask Allah to help you carry what you learned correctly. Because passing the test was not the finish line. It was preparation. You were not strengthened just to survive. You were strengthened to serve, to reflect faith, and to carry yourself with wisdom. And when responsibility increases, it is a sign that Allah sees you as capable. That in itself is a mercy. My brothers and my sisters, if you take one thing with you today, let it be this: Allah never wastes pain. Not a single tear, not a single night you cried quietly, not a single moment you thought you were breaking. Every test you faced was measured. Every delay was intentional. Every hardship had a purpose attached to it. You were not being punished. You were being prepared. If you are still here, still believing, still turning back to Allah despite everything that tried to pull you away, then the most important part of the test has already been passed. The heart has learned what it needed to learn. The soul has been refined. The reliance has shifted from the world to Allah. Do not rush what comes next. Do not fear the future. And do not look back with